Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about a subscriber question, and the question in question is, Frederick, can you talk a little bit about how junior salary levels are tied into experience and tied into education and stuff of that nature? So let's get into that. So salary levels for a junior, this is of course a big topic for a lot of people because hey, you probably heard that software developers actually make a pretty good living, and well, since as you can see I'm actually in a fancy suit, you may think that we're actually making pretty good money overall, and it is true to a point, but there are people out there making quite a lot of more money than we are, and that's why I want to start us off by simply stating that if you are getting into software development for the money, I would urge you strongly to pick another profession, because the amount of work, and unless you are of course extremely talented, you're going to have to work quite hard to become a real software developer. And as you can probably guess, there's easier ways to make a lot of money if that's your goal, but the money is absolutely good. But when it comes to juniors, this is of course a big topic, because hey, it's one of those questions you have when you don't really know how the industry works, just as what's expected of me and how good do I have to be, do I need to know everything, these sorts of things, right? So if we touch on this, like the first part of this question was, okay, how does experience factor in? Now I can tell you right now that experience does matter, and you may think that junior is this term that is just applied to people who don't know software development, but in actuality most of the industry considers a person who has less than 1 year of experience up to, it depends on the company sometimes, but for the most part it's up to 3 years. So between 1 or 3 years, roughly, that's you still being fairly junior, because as I've said in a few other videos, guys, this is not the sort of thing you learn in a few months. If somebody's telling you that you will become a professional in a few months, they are lying to your face. They are. I'm sorry, they are lying to your face. You will learn maybe some basic coding in a few months, but you will not be able to work as a professional, because it takes a lot of time. So of course things such as how long you've been working is going to affect your salary level as a junior. So I mean, if you have 1 year of experience and you have 3, there's going to be a slight difference. It's very hard for me to say by how much, because there's so many factors that play in when somebody sets your salary level. Everything from education background to region, like where you live, to which company you choose, which industry you're going to work for, and so forth and so forth. I mean, if we go on the really high scale, you want to make the biggest money there is in software programming, you're going to go most likely, or rather you're going to have to go into, say, go to London, look at the investment bankers and their companies and have a talk to them about machine learning or high-speed trading as a consultant, of course. And ideally you should have a little bit of a name for yourself as well, and a few doctorates in this field of study, so that you can, of course, not have to pay your employer, but rather run your own consultancy firm. That's about as high end I think I can imagine somebody getting on the pay scale without literally sitting on the board for Google or something. But there are probably other ways that you can make like the biggest amount of money. But for a junior just starting out, the experience does matter in, guys, but it does factor in, but it's not that much. It's not going to differ all that much. We're talking a few €100 maybe here and there. It's not going to be like a big difference. And then you have such things as education background. A lot of people ask me about, all right, does education factor in? Absolutely it does, to a point. At the end of the day, guys, it has to do with what you can do. It's always what you can do. If you have skills that outweigh the cost that you are costing your employer, that's the thing that usually matters. But there are absolutely companies who factor in if you have a fancy degree or a PhD, or if you have masters or whichever, and they will have that with them when they're setting the salary, or when they are negotiating the salary, because that's something that you also have to factor in. A lot of juniors who feel that they are underpaid get underpaid because they don't have one fundamental thing, and that has nothing to do actually with skill. It has to do with your perception of your own value, and that's something we should also talk about, I think. Your perception of your own value. Did you realize that you don't have to take the first offer that you get? If you're just coming out of school, I'm pretty sure that you will just be happy to have a job. And for the most part, the juniors out there will just take the first thing or take the first offer, things of this nature. And that's very natural because, hey, you don't really get that you are in a negotiation. That's another thing. So all these things matter. But what I want you to take away from this little rant of mine, because what I want to touch on here is I want to kind of shift the focus from this idea that this sort of thing matters in the beginning. Because guys, when you first start out as a junior, your skills are nothing. I'm sorry, but they are nothing in comparison to the skills that you are going to have 5 years from then. When 5 years from you having your first job, you are going to be most likely a very proficient programmer. You're going to be in very, very high demand. And you're going to have something that's even more important, and that is real work-life experience. When you have that, everything changes. You will have security in your own role, and you will have these little things that you pick up as you work as a professional. And when you have these things, your salary is going to be quite a lot higher than it is in the beginning. And that's why I urge you to not focus so much on salary levels in the beginning. You should find, you can actually go and look. There's plenty of places where you can look at your region and what the average salary levels are. There's Stack Overflow has things like metrics that show you this if you want to know where you are. But what I urge you to really focus on is to have the proper start. And the proper start has nothing to do with money. It has to do with your education. It has to do with acquiring the skills that you need, not today, but in 5 years. Because in 5 years, you will be considered to be a senior, or at least an experienced programmer, right? And by then, it's vital that you have acquired the skills that the industry perceives you to have, is needed for the industry. It's why I keep telling these people who do these like little, email development and these kind of niche things, and they talk as if they're just another programmer, but they're really not. And it's not because I want to be mean, it's because I want them to understand that when you do that, and then 5 years from that point, when you've started that job, and you go in and try and think that, oh yeah, because you're going to get to that point, you're going to feel confident. And when you get to that point, and you go and sit down at another company, or you go and talk to another part of the industry and you want to work for them, they're just going to look at your CV and dismiss you immediately because you have massive holes in your knowledge. This is actually a very common problem in outsourcing, when people outsource to different countries where, they have tons and tons and tons of developers, but they are not even on par with other developers who have like a more solid foundation in their education. So that's the important thing, guys. The important thing is not what you're going to earn right now. The important thing is to learn as much as humanly possible to really get a good foundation, because in 5 years you're going to out-earn what you're earning today in a very short amount of time. And especially if you're a consultant, if you want to make some real money in the future, consultants usually make a little bit more than people working for a product company, if that's your goal, just in general. So have these things with you. Have a great day.